Hey guys, it's Eric here, and welcome back to my little history lecture on the Mutant role-playing game from its early beginnings, its humble beginnings back in the 80s, up until Mutant Year Zero and now the upcoming game, The Road to Eden. We have gotten past the first version of the game, Mutant 1 and 2, and we are moving on to the next one, which was the generally called the New Mutant, or officially I think it was called Mutant 2089. This game came out in 1989, so it's set 100 years in the future. What happened here is there is a big difference between these two versions of the game. So the relaunch of Mutant now was more gone was the Gamma World inspiration, and now it was more based on Judge Dredd, Blade Runner, it's called Shadowrun, books by William Gibson, the X-Men, things like that. And there was a lot of weapons fetishism going on in this game. I don't have my copy with me right now because it's down in storage, otherwise I would actually show it to you guys. I own a legit copy of that game, and it was the first Mutant I played. I played the other version way later. And the setting in this world, I'm going to actually, if you're seeing me looking in that direction, is because my computer screen is over there and I have some cheat notes over there so I can keep track of everything I want to say. So, 1989, still not the most brilliant view of the future, so it's still the post-apocalypse being seen there. And the setting's background is like this. In 2010, the big fall is starting to happen. The great corporations are starting to take over the world. The nations as we know them, well, not entirely, but things are starting to see a systemic collapse. By the 2020s, the most rich people start to emigrate up into space, which is like 1/10 of the population actually escapes from all the pollution, the epidemics, the wars and everything, and hide out in space. And they bring shit with them, so countries that are already poor become even poorer. By 2030, the world is ruled by mega corporations, basically. And the great cities are becoming more a factor, like a power factor, together with the companies. Let's see now. By the 2040s, it's the Star Wars, where within 10 minutes, the people in space actually come into a conflict, and shots are fired, and basically they kill themselves within 10 minutes. By 2050, Earth is starting to stabilize again under the corporations and the cities. Cybernetics and robot technology is starting to become even more prevalent in society. And by 2060, mutations are becoming more prevalent. They are not generally liked by humans. 2070 is the great catastrophe. Some kind of wrong program, basically Skynet happens, and nuclear bombs are released, which ends up with people basically just living in the cities. Outside the cities are, well, basically there are forbidden zones and the Dusk Lands or something like that. The Dusk Lands are basically the land that isn't entirely destroyed yet, but it's populated by mutants. That's more or less it. The cities are populated by humans and robots, and the mutants are starting to migrate into the cities to find jobs, basically. By 2080 and 89, which is the time of the game, the cities have grown increasingly large, with at least 10 million inhabitants per city. And there's a lot of conflicts because you have the corporations are fighting each other, and there's a lot of criminality and stuff like that. So, gone is the basics of the Gamma World theme, and now we are Judge Dredding it, mega city style, more or less. It also moves into basically the cyberpunk era. The different classes you can play in this game is like the normal human, the psionically gifted human, which is a mutant, the robot, and the mutant. There was in the main game, like the starter box, there was still a heritage from the previous game where you could play a mutated animal. But in all the other expansion modules and in the adventure modules, as far as I remember, there were no mutated animals, at least not intelligent mutated animals, as far as I can remember. Cheers. So this is the new world that they live in. There's a lot of focus on weaponry and fighting and things like that, way more than it was in the previous edition. There's far more technology prevalent in society. All the humans have cybernetic implants, for example, which means that they are indebted to a corporation who paid them to become cybernetically enhanced. The different professions really, how should I say it? It mirrors the environment that they live in. They actually made an entire vocabulary for this game. It was kind of silly, honestly, but basically there was like the street kid who was unemployed, trying to find their way, like a minor criminal, a street ganger. There was the full-life professional criminal, the merc, the metropolitan police officer who's lost his job. If you were from outside the city, you were a nomad. There was also the reporter. I don't really know why they added that, but I think they wanted someone who's more investigative. There was also the SWAT, the technologists, and of course the robots had their own like specific classes that it could be part of. It was like a worker, security, or warrior version. It was only like the security robot that might actually be, how should I say, like looking humanoid. The other ones didn't really have a need for looking human. So they were, like, the security bots were a cybernetic organism, more or less. The system is still, the same system is still used, which is the BRP system, with percentages and everything like that. There were a lot of expansion modules to this game, similar to the previous game, of course. There was, let's see now, it was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 adventure modules, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 expansion modules. Within the first 1.5 to 2 years of the game, I'm not counting, of course, now, as I said in the previous video, I'm not counting anything that was released in the official game magazine, the companion magazine to the game, because there's way more there. But they within the first 5 years, they released 5 adventure modules. Within the first 2 years, 5 adventure modules. Like between 89 and 90, they released 5 adventure modules, all of them taking place in Asia. And I think this could be seen a little bit like a latent... I guess they wanted to get away from the Europe and any familiarity with Shadowrun and Judge Dredd, so I guess they chose Asia to do that. I'm not 100% sure. Asia is also fascinating in the way that they used a lot of folklore and stuff like that into the different modules. By 1990, they released an expansion called the Techno 2090, which was more or less it was 2 books in that. Okay, I should get to the point rather than just stumble around. What they did is like back in the 80s and the early 90s, they released boxes of games. I'm going to show you an example here. Well, actually, I'm not going to show that one. I'm going to show like Mutant Year Zero. You have this game box that inside of it, opening it up, you get everything you need. They did the same with Drakar Demoner, they did the same with Mutant, and some other games up until the Mutant Chronicles, because Mutant Chronicles was released in book form. But the boxes were the expansion modules, basically. And the adventure modules were more or less just the book of the leaflet. They were quite thin. There was like 50 to 60 pages, even 80 sometimes if you were very, very lucky. But most of the expansion modules were a box, which actually had some extra room so you could put your adventure games inside of it, or adventure modules. Techno 2090 was 2 books, came in a box. The first book, as far as I remember, was only, and I'm going to double check this, just to be on the safe side. Yes, there was one rule book, which is kind of very specific in its own way. The rule book was more or less, it was more about like living standard within society, like how much does it cost to go out and eat some food. The general, this I've also found really weird, the general currency used within the game was, and it's kind of funny because it was in the late 80s and they made a prognostication, more or less like, which would be the superpower of Europe. And it was the European Union, or maybe the United States of Europe, the answer to, I mean, when Soviet is gone, you need to have some other superpower countering the US, so the United States of Europe. And the currency, as we all know today, is called the euro, but back then they called it the Eurodollar. So everything is actually in Eurodollar. So they have like how to pay for, how much does food cost, what quality is the food, what different kind of media are there, and some equipment, computers, software, things like that, entertainment. It's a nice expansion when it comes to, you know, fleshing out your world and give more information than just releasing in an adventure module like this is this stuff and everything. It's better to gather everything into one module. Should have been in the original module, in my opinion. And they added also some information about robots, a little bit more information about robots, because they only had, as I mentioned, 3 classes: the worker robot, basically like an assembly line robot, the security robot, and the war robot. And here they actually added replicants, so Blade Runner became basically the part of this universe, and more about like different kinds of robots that you might find around the city, the hab blocks, like the industrial robot, the household robot, and so forth. And even about androids. There were a little bit about vehicles and vehicle rules, because they were kind of lacking, you know, like how does a hovercraft work, and what would happen with a tank, you know, bigger, fancier, more guns, more guns, more guns. So they needed to find everything else. Bioagents, diseases, poisons, genetics, psychiatries, different about information. There is a lot of information about different weapons creators and weaponry. It's flowing out of my ears. Basically, the weaponry available to everyday people were the ones pre the 2000s. So they made like tables for all the weapons pre-90s, like from basically like 60s up to 2000. After that, they made advanced weaponry, which was only available to people who were within the corporations or the military, like laser weaponry or maser weaponry, and I think even plasma weaponry. I can't remember. Or if it was just gauss weaponry and neutron weaponry, things like that. And then there was the second book, which was just called the Equipment Book, and maybe I'll be able to add some screens up here, because basically it was just like a little bit how much does it cost to buy different vehicles. But the thing that was most interesting to people back then, as a young teenager and stuff like that, you want guns, and there was guns galore in this book. And even freaking power armor. It was really funny in that way. And it took the game to an entirely new level. After this, they started to release a little bit more. They started to try to consolidate the setting. So they did the next, what I consider is a big problem, because if you played Shadowrun, you have like the normal world that you play, the normal setting world you play, and you have cyberspace. Everybody in this era in game creation believes in cyberspace, and there's even movies about it, that you get sucked up into the internet and stuff like that. So they released the Cyber Zone, this expansion module, Cyber Zone. And again, it's an interesting idea. I mean, you bring, like, you have your deckers and your hackers and everything, and you bring a new sphere to them to actually work within. And it's a brilliant idea in itself. But if you have only one hacker or decker or whatever, it will slow down your game. And that's a problem. So, for example, while the party is waiting for the hacker to hack into whichever database and everything like that, you're going to be stuck with a group of 4 people being really bored while they're waiting for a guy who's doing like a 5-second action to take up 30 minutes just to going through cyberspace, because, time dilation and everything like that. Still a cool idea, but it's not that efficient game-wise. I'm sorry, but that's a normal problem in these kind of games when it comes to cyberpunk. After that, they started actually to expand upon Europe. There was like an expansion about Berlin in the year 2092, which is considered to be quite good, because it was very, very detailed. Another box called Berlin 2092, and it contained a lot of information about the city, the different intrigues, the hab blocks, and everything. And it gave a lot of room for, like, this is the setting, but this is also open to you to use. Like, here are maps, this is standard how a hab block looks, you can use it for whatever you want. So that was a great idea. And there were some more adventure modules after that. Can't remember exactly. I remember one was in France called Cul-de-sac, and then there was another one, I can't remember much about it. Then they released 2 more expansion modules, and I think they were only books. I remember Crim, which is like a book about criminals within the setting. It was good, but it also added like really weird shit, like monofilament garrots. Sounds kind of cool when I say it, like monofilament garrots, but considering the fact that within the setting, like a monofilament is like one string made from one, like one long string made from one solid material. You use it for like a weed whacker. But monofilament in the setting is actually just one atom. You don't need a monofilament garrote. You don't need to garrote anyone with it, because just slip it around the throat and go. If you have the size of an atom cutting through, it will just between both atoms, and you have decapitated person. It's like insta-kill. There are a lot of weird shit like that, and there's everything like that in every single setting. Like hunting Jedis with a flamethrower and grenades, for example. But Crim still like brought up different criminal networks and cool shit like that, and some new classes, so that was a good one. I never got my hands on the SWAT book, which I guess is about the special weapons and tactics groups used by the corporations. So I don't really know that much about it. But as I said, this was the first version of Mutant that I played. My first, and I guess Alex is going to laugh his ass off for this one, but my first character was a robot with a cybernetic organism. Again, he looked human, and he looked exactly like Leslie Nielsen from when he played, what's it called? When he's the Frank Drebin. I can't remember what the movies are called. So that was my first character, actually, a robot looking like that, bumbling about in the cyberpunk universe of 2089. We made our own setting in Scandinavia based on, as I mentioned before, the Pyrisamfundet, so we made our own version of that, because there was a bit of confusion between the different, for us at least. I mean, we were kids, we didn't really grasp the difference between the two editions. So we kind of brought some of the old stuff into the newer stuff and basically accelerated the Pyrisamfundet to to several city-states. So we played a lot in the Sky Tower city. My most memorable character from that game was actually a mutated animal. Again, maybe one of the few ever intelligent mutated animals. He wasn't that intelligent, I have to tell you guys that. He was a mutated brown bear, and to translate his name, he was called Shag. So I made Shaggy as a mutated bear, and he had, I think he had a laser carbine, and he went through a lot of weird shit. Within the country, we created our own music festival, which was a spin-off of Woodstock called Umestock. There's a city far north in this country called Umeå. So we made the Umestock festival, and people were coming from far and wide to this mecca of music. It was really crazy, man. There was some kind of... I'm trying to remember now what the hell we had there. There was like a pair... I don't know how they ended up there. There were a group of Jamaicans who were constantly high on weed, driving around in a Volkswagen bus, like a hippie bus, in all the colors of the rainbow, selling different kinds of drugs. Yeah, very stereotypical, right? There was also like the archbishop of the area, or whatever, however a diocese would look like back in that future setting, who was a pervert, and he always rode around in a limousine driven by a mole who couldn't see anything anyway, so he hit everything. Yeah, we had a weird sense of humor. Seriously. There's one guy who played a character who was a Norwegian fisherman with a telescopic fishing rod that had such a strong telescopic... the telescopic rod was so quick and hard when it slung itself that it could actually impale people and kill them. That was his main weapon. That, and he looked like a typical skipper with a yellow rain hat and the yellow clothes and all that, raincoat. It was really fucked up. But still, we had a lot of fun with that setting, and it's worth a check. I would say that it went from the cutesy to trying to be very serious. I think it took itself a little bit too seriously. But still, it was kind of fun in its own way. If you could separate between them. We weren't that interested in the serious cyberpunk, so we made fun of it, basically. And it worked for us. Other groups probably took it way more seriously than we did. I'm not sure. That's how we did it. So, that's going to end this talk about Mutant. In the next one, we're going to go on to one setting that will be the third edition of the game, called Mutant Rymd, or Mutant Space, which is the precursor to Mutant Chronicles. I never played it myself, but I own a copy of it, so I'm going to have a look through it, and I'm going to tell you guys more about it. So, thank you guys so much for watching, and if you liked what you saw, do leave a like and a comment. But for now, I'm going to sign off, and I'll see you guys later.